now. She simply instructed me to get her friends together and let them tell stories. Marilyn loved telling and writing stories. She had been sharing her tales of the battered boot with me for years. And then I found an even earlier incarnation when I was at her house. Marilyn didn't shy away from a bit of exaggeration and ad-libbing to make the story better. The first time I heard her tell a story about an event I had been a part of, I had to bite my lip to keep from saying, "That's not how I remembered it." Her version was much more exciting. So let's hear all of those stories and celebrate the life of an amazing person. We're going to start off with a couple of video clips, the first being Marilyn's appearance on Miami Vice with her iconic line, see if you can catch it. The second is a video clip sent by Marilyn's dear friend, Brenda Robbie.
Interesting bomb. One of my lab techs thought it might be some new form of liquid plastique, so we ran it through a scanner.
And?
Well, you can see them swimming if you'd like.
Where?
Mm-hmm. You know, this stuff could cause quite an explosion.
I knew it.
In the cow population.
What is it?
Bull semen.
Bull semen. Bull sperm.
Mm-hmm.
There it is. There it is. That's my tank. That's my... Hey, Buckwheat, let me in, man. Let me...
I'm supposed to be in the hospital.
Hey, will you tell these guys it's all right?
Guys, it's all right.
It's defrosted. Now, what kind of people would let frozen bull semen thaw?
Must be our warm hearts.
Man, I come in from Texas with 2 tanks of gargantuous semen to ship to my partner in Belize. One gets stolen, the other gets ruined. Defrosted by the cops.
Gargantua?
Yeah, I named him for his, equipment. 1,000 units a tank. $100 a unit, easy.
100 grand for bull sperm?
Yeah, and what am I doing? I'm just minding my own business, sleeping in my truck by the Agriculture Department export place.
And, lucky us, we were right next door, huh?
I get bushwhacked. Boy, I tell you what. Texas Rangers never would have let them little bitty sperms out of the corral. That's for dang sure.
Good evening. My name is Brenda Robbie. Marilyn and I were friends for over 50 years. We met in the mid-70s. Marilyn was the choreographer and I was the pianist for a musical at Hollywood Playhouse. We quickly developed a mutual respect for each other's talents. Marilyn also had a great gift for friendship. She treasured each of her friends dearly, and she readily offered her help whenever it was needed. I now share with you one of her favorites, Send in the Clowns. How perfect that her name, Laudadio, is Italian for praise the Lord. Thank you, God, for this beautiful gift of our friend Marilyn.
It seems that Marilyn lived many lifetimes during her time here on Earth, from being at Barry to teaching to technology and the neighbors and friends that she collected along the way. We're going to touch on each of these, and we'll provide invitations throughout the evening to anyone who wants to say a few words.
Hi, I'm Gail Hoffman. Back in the Barry days, I was Gail Bolton. And I met Marilyn in the summer of 1967 when we were both in a children's theater together at Barry. We were putting on the Pied Piper. Of course, Marilyn had the title role, and I was in the chorus. We met up again the first day of freshman year in 1969. And I was kind of surprised that she was in the same level I was because she seemed so much more advanced. I was right. Marilyn also was a teacher. She taught the dance and movement class that we were all required to take as theater, speech, and drama majors. That's when I became a little terrified of Marilyn because when we were in this class, she had us all sitting spread-eagled on the floor, and we all had to touch our toes with our fingers. Well, I came up a little short, and Marilyn came up behind me and was pushing my shoulder blades, and still wouldn't work. I was still a couple of inches short, and I'm screaming, "This is not going to make me any more flexible, Marilyn!" I only lasted 3 semesters at Barry, but I kept coming back because it was a home base for me. I was a day hop like she was, and continued to work and volunteer where I could. Marilyn and I both during those years met up at Richard's department store. I don't know if anybody of you remember that. She was in men's furnishings. I was in lingerie. She and I would meet. We would coordinate our lunches and meet, and she would fill me in on the gossip of Barry, and it was a wonderful time getting to know her outside of that Barry globe. And then that didn't last long because she applied for, and of course got, Miss Fashion Teen Coordinator at Jordan Marsh. So I know I'm bringing up a lot of places that don't even exist anymore. We lost touch for a while after that. There were occasional sightings at Barry when there were plays or recitals or honorariums for different teachers and things. But even though we never had the regular contact anymore, it was as if no time had ever passed. We could just pick up and go right on, as it was with all of our classmates at Barry. I met my husband through that group. We had 2 daughters, and they are both blessed to have 4 people from that group as their godparents. And so it just, those friendships that you make at that age just seem to be cement. You know, no matter how much time passes, no matter how much the paths diverge, we shared something special and precious. Marilyn and I connected again on a more regular basis about 20 years ago. She had fallen and broken her kneecap, and I was available to come and take her to the hospital and anything else that she would need during that time. And what a stoic woman. I mean, you knew she was in a lot of pain, but never really showed up on her face. She was just going to soldier through. But in the end, even after the physical therapy, it kind of marked the end of her dance career. And she said something to me one time that still sticks. Dance was not only an art form, it was where I lived. It was my soul. It spoke in louder sentences and was my beacon to God. There were movie nights. We'd go off to local theaters, but the best ones were the ones at Marilyn's house. She was a member of SAG, and so she would get all of those movies so that she could see them, review them, vote on them, and we would put in our comments as well. But the best part was dinner, because Marilyn would cook, and Marilyn was a fabulous cook. Getting to know the 2000 version of Marilyn was to see a living example of a Renaissance woman, putting her gifts and talents to use in a variety of mediums. And when she fell ill, one more skill set was added to her resume: interpreter of medical jargon. She armed herself for battle and never gave up during the long 2+ years of siege. It was an honor to serve at her side whenever she needed me, in laughter, tears, frustration, prayer, and hope. Peace be with you, my friend. Your life mattered, and you will be remembered. Thank you. A couple of our friends who couldn't make it and couldn't upload a video sent some comments that they wanted read, so I hope you don't mind if I'm their voice tonight. Pearl Farley, I don't know if that name rings any bells with any of you, but she went all through Barry, and so she and Marilyn had a very good relationship for all that time. Here's what she says. I first met Marilyn at Barry College in 1969. Our relationship over the years spanned our individual journeys through life, wafting between distance and closeness. I'm glad to say that for the last decade, we enjoyed a closer companionship, and I am grateful that I was able to spend time with her at the close of her earthly existence. Marilyn's ability to recreate herself as a performer, director, teacher, photographer, website developer, just to name a few of her occupations, demonstrated the drive, the creativity, and the tenacity to embrace life to its fullest. But that was her public life. In her private life, she was a good friend in her willingness to help, to share her time, knowledge, companionship, and on occasion, her cooking. She loved to cook. She dedicated herself to being the best at whatever she did. She was not someone to settle for second best and was always meeting each challenge as a battle to be won, including her last battle with cancer. At times, I would call her my warrior princess. When last I spoke to her toward the end, I called her my warrior princess one last time. But in retrospect, I will think of her as a warrior queen. She deserved that promotion. Farewell, my warrior queen, until, God willing, we meet again. Kathy and Mark Mason were also classmates. Marilyn used to credit Mark with everything she ever learned about stagecraft, because Mark was the king of that. And when you read some of her tales of the battered boot, you'll hear about the amazing Mark Mason. He and his wife, Kathy, who they also met at Barry, wish they could be here tonight, but instead Kathy wrote something that she'd read as well. As we all remember today how Marilyn touched each of our lives, we'd like to offer a short story about her generous spirit. During the pandemic, when all of us were holed up in our houses, she took on the mammoth job of digitizing and organizing boxes of memorabilia from our college theater days 50 years ago. This included hours of sifting through old, dusty show programs, photos, and audio tapes. She recreated production timelines and even restored an old 8mm silent film clip with sound from one of our favorite shows, as there was no video in those days. That she had the patience to do this was admirable for future drama students at Barry to appreciate the rich history we experienced all those years ago. But then she gifted each of us in the old theater gang with a link to this invaluable archive so we could time travel back to our golden days when we were all so young and beautiful. It was a loving, generous thing to do that was deeply appreciated. That was in 2021. We reconnected with Marilyn then as she began what turned out to be her final journey. Prior to that, we'd been enjoying a special Facebook page she had created relaying witty, funny backstage stories in her distinctive storytelling style. She used her time and talents to bring together old friends separated by years and distance to connect and share memories of those wonderful carefree times. It was a delight to read and reminisce as her wry humor made us laugh out loud at times at the long-forgotten crazy things we did back then. In one serious post on that page from 2018, she listed those who had great influence on her life at Barry who had already passed. The post was headed with this quote by Thomas Campbell: "To live in hearts we leave behind is not to die." Today's celebration of life is proof of that. 2 years ago, our 50th anniversary was coming up, and we found our wedding photos had all turned orange. And we were all there too. So. She had become a web designer and a technical wizard in later life, so we asked if we could employ her to put them together in a video to show our family. She carefully restored each photo, set them to music, and produced a beautiful video we cherish. And she did this while undergoing various treatments, but assured us she wanted to do it as a distraction. After she finished the video, she gifted Kathy with a completely restored photo of her grandmother when she was in her 20s. The photo had been in sad shape, and the beautifully restored version now sits on her dresser. Again, typical of Marilyn and such a generous spirit, even as we now know she was fighting for her future at that time. Marilyn was so talented in so many ways. When we think of her, we'll remember her witty sense of humor, kindness, and generosity right up to that final curtain. May she rest in peace with her beloved Cassie and all who knew her and loved her. Mark and Kathy Mason. As Elizabeth said, we're going to have another segment of Marilyn's life as teacher and mentor, but is there anyone here present that was also a classmate of her during her Barry days? Then I'm going to introduce Miss Chris Chavers to come up here and continue on with the tribute. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Christine Chavers. I met Marilyn 54 years ago. I'm not that old. Neither is she, or neither was she. In 1969, she was a year behind me in college, but she was light years ahead of me in talent. And it was an amazing experience to be a friend of hers, to be a colleague of hers, and to work together with her. We had many adventures together over the years, but the first one was when we decided we would develop the Barry College Children's Theater for summers between our college years. And that was an amazing experience all in and of itself, because not only did we perform with the kids from the neighborhood right at Barry, But we also came up here to one of the churches and performed there. Aladdin. Now, I had never known anyone in my life who never slept and could make costumes, do the publicity, the posters, the tickets. It was an amazing experience. And that was before computers. She did it all with her artistic talent. And when we came up here to do Aladdin, I forget the name of the church. It's one of the Catholic churches right up here on 441. We had to use her father's old pickup truck to move the set. And we had flats, 4x8 flats, standing up in the back of that pickup truck, all the way up from North Miami to this church on 441. Now you can imagine, she's driving, I'm in the back of the pickup truck holding the flats, and the wind comes up. Well, we got there, and the kids performed in beautiful costumes that she designed, and I helped her make, but she made most of them. And we had a wonderful experience and made a little bit of money in the summer with that. Later in our journeys, she directed me in a children's hour and decided that as Martha, I would not come out for a curtain call because I had been killed in the show. It was really sad because a lot of the people in the audience who knew me thought that I had really been killed. It was difficult, but we did it. We had other experiences as time went by. When she started to start the Mimic Theater, I had been teaching for some time, and I'd been working with the Florida Association for Theater Education. I was the president, for the second president of that organization, and I had the opportunity to develop the state conference, the yearly state conference here in Fort Lauderdale. And so she and I went from hotel to hotel, and we bargained, and we negotiated with hotels, and we finally got a really good deal at the Yankee Clipper, and we worked really hard. And she did workshops. She did wonderful workshops with the teachers from all over the state in mime and Commedia dell'arte. And I'm telling her Commedia workshops were the best ever. All of us learned a great deal from her. Over time, I never forgot them, and I was able to use them. And as I worked in different schools over time, I would bring her in, I would pay her, I would do everything I could. The kids would make money, so they would pay her to come in and choreograph for us or help us with some movement activities. And so that experience of being friends and colleagues with Marilyn was always a most exciting thing, and my students always got something wonderful out of it. Then she started the Mimic Theater Company and was selling us play scripts, because often it was very difficult for us to get play scripts, and quickly. Sometimes we needed to make choices for one acts and that kind of thing that was difficult to get from Samuel French within a day or two, and she always had what we needed. I helped her sell them to other teachers. She brought them to the Florida Association for Theater Education, to the thespian festivals, and we worked really hard until it was too hard. And that's when I think she decided to change her career to go into tech. She was the only person I knew in the early or late 1970s who had a computer. Not only did she have a computer, she had numbers of computers, and they were all over her house. And I kept saying, how do you do this? I don't know. What is this all about? So finally, she was able to take her hobby, which she called it, and turn it into a career. And from what I understand, she was quite wonderful at it. So my experience with Marilyn was always an exciting, fun, awesome experience because of her talent and her ability to make things work. No matter what the problems were, she made things work. And when she became a professor at Barry, it was easy for me to recommend my students to her because I knew that they would get a good education. And I think she was really quite good at Barry, and I'm sorry that she was not able to continue always at Barry. But her students gained so much from her. I knew when she was at Dillard how she worked with people. My friend Virginia Shooker was also one of the dance teachers there at the time. They enjoyed a good experience together. And now I have a few other things from other people who loved working with her. This is from Colleen Brennan, a dear friend, classmate, teacher, mentor, dancer, singer, actor, director, and choreographer, has exited the stage. I met Marilyn Laudadio in college in 1972. I was a freshman, she was a senior. I was in awe of her. After choreographing me in a rock musical, she quietly recruited me into the theater and dance department. We spent many years running around Miami in her beat-up Celica, performing at all manner of venues. I was also in her first Commedia dell'arte mime troupe. I still remember the reverence I felt when she entrusted me with the part of Perrault, which only she had done up until that time. I was never as good at Perrault as no one could be, but she insisted I do it. She was a genius, I'm sure of that. Scary smart, smarter than anyone needs to be, and more talented than anyone I've known. Not just in the arts, but as a computer programmer as well. She fought her first round of cancer at age 27. A double mastectomy and a dire diagnosis changed the trajectory of her life for 5 years as she waited to die. She never stopped dancing, though. That was her constant. Then, when the 5-year mark passed, she began to take life seriously again. She continued as a professor, touching countless lives during that time. After 40 years, she was diagnosed with a brand new cancer, stage 4 ovarian. That was in 2022. She fought hard, researching and locating her next cutting-edge protocol. Last night, her beautiful body broke and the lights went down. All of us, scattered far and wide, are smiling tonight, thinking of you and the brilliant life you led. And this one is from Michael Marks. It's kind of a Bible. But it's really good. I still keep thinking that she's going to come back online suddenly and say, "Sorry, everyone, my hairdryer was on and I couldn't hear a thing. It was a lovely funeral, but unfortunately I'm fine. Thanks for all the nice things that you said about me. Please send any money or gifts directly to my house." As one of the most influential people in my life, Marilyn was simultaneously a teacher, friend, collaborator, resident and mime chief, confidant, and my constant advocate. She was the first person who ever really criticized my acting when I was a freshman at Barry. Up until that point, I was pampered, a coddled little prick who coasted on compliments by friends and family. I was lucky to be able to cajole an audience with my comic timing. I leaned on compliments by friends and family, maybe too much. Marilyn immediately saw the crutch growing out of me and started to claw away at my bullshit veneer, hoping to find some modicum of sincerity concealed deep beneath this fledgling, conceited theater major. My first time on stage in front of her, she tore into me with every sentence. No, with every word. No, with every movement. Nothing I did was right. Everything was mismatched and out of step. She threw me curves. She demanded the impossible. She threw open the curtains on what I could not conceive of. She made me reconsider myself. I hated it. She forced attention where it was least given. I rebelled. She re-examined me from the inside out. I rejected her teaching. She broke me down despite my protests. That was the point as a sophomore where I was blessed with the ability to look back and see where I had come from. Holy crap, she was right. I had made progress. She was looking for something. I still don't know what. I came home after the first day on her analytical stage, more of a psychiatrist's couch, broken and torn apart. I felt I had no place in the theater. I was woefully inadequate. It took me a few weeks to realize that what she was doing was exactly what she needed to do to allow me to find myself, my true self. Not the bulletproof facade I had grown so attached to that had protected me throughout high school. She taught me how to move, how to let my body tell the story, the technique of an actor which serves me to this day. The internal motivations and what-ifs that form an actor's decisions. What are we if not our decisions? Yes, you helped me decide. You still help me decide. She took me to a new level of awareness, and I reluctantly followed. I began a masochistic pilgrimage, seeking out torment and suffering, whatever I could to find, eagerly reconstruct the edifice of my life. Where did I come from? Where was I going? Was all this about laughs? Is comedy all there is of me? Is there an actor somewhere inside? She never acknowledged my progress, but eventually befriended me, and we became partners in her mimic theater company, working as a duo at many parties and festivals. She allowed me to compose music for her theatrical productions. She was a constant source of inspiration in my life. I knew if I had a problem, she would have a director's note for me that would somehow improve the performance. And yes, it's all a performance. Sometimes we need to recognize it. I carry her teachings with me every day and remember her infectious laugh. I still believe she's in the costume room somewhere, working on my commedia mask, asking me to shut up, and still, while she slathers me with some vicious clay cast designed to entomb me with only 2 straws shoved in my nostrils for oxygen, or asking me to try on one of her bizarre cape creations, attempting to turn me into Nebish El Gallo, yes, we had fun. There was a new stock character in heaven. It's Marilyn Laudadio, a comic angel of generosity, whispering her well-earned wisdom in the ears of the players as they stand sheepishly in the wings, preparing for their entrance. Hey, Michael. And now I have one more, and that's from my good friend, Beverly Blanchett. That's not, who could not be here today because she's in New England. And that's not it either. Where is it? Sorry, folks. I will find it. There it is. There it is. Okay. She said, I appreciated the time to speak to her Monday night. Thank you, Elizabeth Decker, for making that possible. I learned a lot from Marilyn, starting about 40 years ago when I attended the Commedia dell'arte workshop she gave at the annual Florida Association for Theater Education Conference. Teaching at Vero Beach High School, I was directing a Commedia play, A Company of Wayward Saints, and asked her for her assistance. If not for her time with my students, they wouldn't have achieved a Critics' Choice Award, qualifying them for the State Thespian Festival, where they received straight superior ratings. Later, the Palm Beach Dreyfus School of the Arts, she assisted with a few shows we produced, notably working with actors, character movement, greatly enhancing each play. I especially enjoyed sharing props and costumes with her when she taught at Dillard School of the Arts, and we were both directing Into the Woods a few weeks apart. She built the magic witch's cane, which sparked fumes flames safely. The performer mime in her own right will be eternally grateful for her gifts she shared with us. Thank you, Marilyn. You'll always be in our hearts. Rest in peace. You deserve it. Yep. She was a good friend. She was a fine teacher. She was a brilliant performer and a talent that cannot be compared.
It's so weird to hear, like, you talk about Into the Woods, we remember Into the Woods. You talk about Mimic Theater Company, I remember Mimic Theater Company. Like, it's very surreal to be here. My name is Michelle Turrell, and I was Marilyn's student at Dillard, with other people in the room and at home. I met Marilyn Laudadio 35 years ago when I transferred to Dillard School of the Performing Arts as a high school junior. My entire world was changed with this transfer, and chief among the lasting impacts was my relationship with and mentorship of Marilyn Laudadio. I'm a theater teacher now, and I refer to all my kids as Turrell Squad, which sort of happened on its own, but every time I hear it or say it, I remember that in 1991, we called ourselves Laudadiites. And the full circleness of that in this moment, knowing that this was coming, when we knew that the end was coming, I was at school, I was in the trenches, in tech on my weirdly added last show of the year. I got a text from Elizabeth, and so I was fortunate enough to be with Marilyn in hospice on Monday, knowing that she passed on Tuesday, surrounded by my students while we're trying to get a show up at the end of the week, in this world that I only knew how to create because of Marilyn. Just the emotional parallels of all of that has had me in quite a tailspin. I have talked to some of my friends from high school and my family. It's wild to hear about the Hollywood Playhouse and Marilyn as a choreographer, because also totally separate from my own stories. My husband worked with Marilyn at the Hollywood Playhouse, where she choreographed him in musicals, and he had 2 left feet, and she was so frustrated with him. And that's such a weird story, right, for them to know each other, because that's totally separate from my stories. I have posted nothing on social media about Marilyn, about my feelings about any of this, because that's been a very difficult thing for me. The enormity of her impact on my life, on my career, on how I build relationships with my students. It was hard to put into words, and it was hard to share it so publicly, right? It was difficult. I think Marilyn really saw me. The good, the bad, the insecure teenager, the figuring myself out, the capable but needing a push to learn how to do it for myself. She was demanding and just would not let us get away with ridiculous pretense when she knew we could do something real. She was full of humor and good spirit. God, I just keep hearing her laugh, right? And independence and experiences in theater and out of theater. And she just knew how to do more than anybody else I'd ever seen in my life. unafraid to reinvent herself over and over, unafraid to tackle technology. She is the only person I ever knew who actually had one of those brick cell phones. But God, when we were on the road in Indiana and we were at internationals and she pulled it out and it was like the craziest thing. But she cursed and she laughed and she made me feel like an adult in the conversation when I was 17, and she stayed in touch with me long after I got out of high school, and I would sit at State and work the mimic theater table at State for people to buy and think, oh my gosh, the idea that in my collection of books right now, in my classroom, I have some mimic theater workbooks, and I also have, like, I would say dozens, but probably way more than that, books that are all stamped Laudadio because they were in her library. And then a few years ago, she's like, hey, Michelle, I have these boxes of books. I think that you should take them. And I have all of these books that used to be in her classroom that are now in my classroom. And, well, they're in my office because, you know, we teach in Florida. But but she trusted me with leadership. She taught me how to stage manage on that production of Into the Woods, which was the best thing I ever learned, right? My parents will tell you I learned more from Marilyn Laudadio than I ever did in all of college and all of grad school. It was, right? She helped me find my first real magical moments of what this storytelling art that we love can really be. And she kept in touch, and she met my child. We laughed over old memories. God, and oh my gosh, all those pictures, right? That project she did for Barry, she did it for Dillard too. So we've all got this archive of pictures and videos, and thank goodness, because we love them. I have a small group of students, just these 4 kids, my friend Lisa, who saw me get all this news. They saw me get this message that Marilyn sent us when she reached out to us to tell us what she was going through and that she could see the end was coming. And then they saw me get the message from Elizabeth about hospice. And then they checked in with me individually to see how I was going. And so they heard the news that she had passed. And it's just a small group of kids, right? One's 15, one's 16, one's 17, one's 18. And they, each one of them privately came to me to offer like a moment of comfort, just to check in with me and to tell me how proud they think she must be of me because of the world I made for them. And I hope that that's true because all I have ever done is try to give them what I had, which was an extraordinary experience with a group of exceptionally loving and talented teachers. And the center of all of that was Marilyn Laudadio. I love you, Marilyn. I will always be a Laudadiite. Thank you for a lifetime of love and respect and encouragement. Okay.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Lisa, for being here. My name's Tiffany Joy. I was known as TJ at Dillard. Missed performing arts for a hot second there, just saying. But yeah, we had such a good time at Dillard, and I agree with everything Michelle said, because Marilyn was the epicenter of that. She supported all the other teachers. She encouraged us to fully be authentic, be in our truest self, be open and recognized and acknowledged for who we were and what we wanted to discover about ourselves. And she pulled that out of us like there was no tomorrow. I agree with like her work ethic was beyond. I'm Italian as well, so it is in the bloodline, but it was nonstop and invigorating and inspiring, and Marilyn let me play with fire when I was 15 years old, 16 years old, like doing stunts and just encouraging everyone that was in and around her to just be and enjoy and celebrate this life that we get to live and experience and cherish. And she brought together, I was telling her neighbors, like, she brought together community. She made you feel safe. She made you feel heard and acknowledged and whole. And we are all better human beings because we have been touched by Marilyn. And Miss Laudadio will always just hold one of the dearest and most honored spots in my heart because of who she is and was as a human. And I feel very honored and very fortunate that I experienced 4 awesome years at Dillard, and we got to be wacky and awkward and out of control most days. But she just held us like a good Italian mom, like a good Italian chef. I didn't get much of her cooking, but she did have snacks. I remember the snacks. Gotta feed these teenagers, let me tell you. And we would stay at the school till 10:30, 11 o'clock, early. Like, I wanted to be in high school every single day because of who she is, because of what all of those teachers, the magic of Dillard was just such I keep saying the word cherished, but there's no other words. Like, I would go back to high school in a heartbeat. So maybe I'll see you guys there. But here's to you, Marilyn. Thank you, Miss Laudadio, so much for helping to make me who I am today and to give all of us the love and the breath and the presence. So thanks.
Thank you. See if I can get through this. I moved to South Florida in 2000 and met Marilyn on the first job I took. She was the technical writer, and I was programming an interface for a medical device. We happily continued our association on the next job, and our friendship grew from there. On September 11th, 2001, we were working together on a website from our homes, and she called me to tell me the news. In our separate houses, we sat watching the horror unfold on TV while on the phone with each other. We continued to share our heartbreaks and joys throughout the years. Marilyn called me when her dogs passed and when she welcomed Cassie and Gracie into her home. I called Marilyn when I announced I was pregnant, and she has been spoiling Alan ever since. Marilyn loves telling the story of the FBI raid as we were programming Love's Secure website. We were both learning how to build websites and faking it until we made it. Even in her last days, Marilyn was apologizing to me for being acerbic, which I think was her favorite word, with me back then. And each time I would tell her there was nothing to apologize for. From my perspective, Marilyn was straightforward and spoke her mind, something I really appreciated after growing up in a very passive-aggressive culture. We realized over and over again just how much we had in common, whether it was that we both played clarinet in our high school marching band, completed college in 3 years, or our love for Star Trek. We also complemented each other in many ways. We worked together on 3 different clients, and I hired her to do website work on an independent contract I did for a bit. Marilyn was amazing at designing graphics for the website and thought about how to make the user interface intuitive before there was even a title for what she was doing. I am not creative in that way, and the graphics and user interfaces I designed usually came out looking a bit comical or stark. Marilyn also used her previous experience publishing her own books to create well-written user manuals and beautiful product catalogs. We stayed connected even after we no longer worked together. Marilyn became a part of our Christmas celebrations, and for a few years, she instigated a tradition of bringing in dollar store toys as presents. We'd take our toys to the front yard and try them out. They were usually some kind of wind-up or rubber band-fueled airplane or rocket. I'm sure our neighbors thought we were crazy because this was before we had kids. A bunch of grown adults out in the street throwing around toys. She even got my in-laws involved one year. Marilyn would claim us as her family for the annual Heiko company party, and she really did make us feel like family. If you were to ask Alan about his aunt, his first thought would be of Marilyn. She ensured that Alan had ample opportunity to explore his creative side. She gave him a face painting kit, passed down her juggling stuff, and encouraged him when he participated in acting camp each summer. When Alan decided to take acting seriously, she provided both me and Alan advice on how to get into the theater program in high school. One discussion we had was about the best way to get Alan some dancing skills. Marilyn suggested tap dancing, and boy was she right. Alan loves everything about tap dance and is learning quickly. On one trip to a bird refuge, Marilyn noticed Alan practicing his tap dance as we walked along. We stopped and Marilyn showed us a few steps, complaining the whole time about the difficulties of trying to tap dance in sneakers. So she went home and purchased new tap shoes so that she could show Alan more steps. At another time, in a discussion about acting techniques, Alan responded to Marilyn with an "I already know what to do" attitude, as teenagers are known to do. Marilyn called him a little shit. The look on Alan's face was priceless, and he quickly learned the lesson to drop the attitude with Marilyn. Marilyn loved photography throughout her life, as evidenced by the large collection of photos and videos she has for most of the theater productions she was involved with. These last few years, she focused on nature and wildlife photography, and we enjoyed joining her when we could. Marilyn and my husband, Carl, who's also an avid photographer, would talk at length about their cameras, the right camera settings, and lenses. When Marilyn purchased her large zoom lens, Carl definitely turned a shade of green. Marilyn submitted a lot of her photos to stock agencies and loved to tell the story about her best-selling photo, which was of a stump grinder that she snapped when she had to remove a tree from her yard. There were a few years before the pandemic when we seemed to be too busy in our own lives. Our visits and phone calls were months apart, which is something that I regret. We were all feeling isolated, being stuck in our homes during the pandemic, and Marilyn started sending morning text messages out. I know that many of you were the recipients of cute, funny, or inspirational memes each morning. In some cases, they would mention the day of the week it was, which was really helpful in the pandemic time warp. Marilyn and I also started a weekly game night and invited a few friends. It was so much fun, telling stories and laughing as we competed in intense games of Rummy Cube. Marilyn had a signature response when somebody just wouldn't give up on their turn as they struggled to lay down all their tiles. With a raised eyebrow, Marilyn would say, "Competitive much?" all the while knowing that she was the most competitive of us all. As the pandemic restrictions eased, those of us with now teenage children found it harder to make time as there were mom responsibilities to contend with. We continued game night after Marilyn was diagnosed with cancer because she wanted to minimize her exposure to other people's germs. We were pretty good at meeting weekly, even if it was just me and Marilyn. However, it was harder these last 6 months, as Marilyn spent more time in the hospital and I was overworked and sick. As I sat with Marilyn on the night that she passed, I played a Rummikub game on my phone. I was playing against the computer and I'd been losing. Around 11 p.m., I thought about heading home soon, but maybe just one more game to see if I could win one. I could hear Marilyn's voice in my head saying, "Competitive much?" I played a few more games, looking over at Marilyn throughout to confirm she was still breathing. Then finally I was winning a game, and as I triumphantly laid out my last tile, I looked up and saw that Marilyn was no longer breathing. It was our last game night together. So I invite anyone else who would like to speak about Marilyn to come up and share your stories.
Hello. Yeah, Marilyn definitely spoiled me. In hindsight, it's really amazing that she did all that stuff for me, and I don't know who I'd be without it. I mean, she helped me learn photography, web design, acting, and even learning how to play the guitar more recently. Yeah. I really do miss her. Thank you.
So I know sometimes it's not the easiest to stand up and share stories. So as we close out, we do have some refreshments in the back. Feel free to help yourself and share the stories among yourself. There's also, as you can see, we have a board with pictures and articles. There's also pictures on the table. I also have a bunch of her headshot pictures that she had extra of. Feel free to take any of these items, and if somebody else took the one you wanted, just let me know. I have everything digitally because Marilyn. So please, enjoy each other's company, and thank you all. Thank you to everyone who joined us virtually. I know that Marilyn appreciates that we were here for her, and just like she was here for us for so many years. And the only thing I know I'd like to say is I just miss her. Miss her every day. So thank you everyone for coming. Of course, come on up. Well, that just goes to show you how much Marilyn means to us.
Absolutely. Me and Marilyn met at the dog park, and it was kind of a spiritual event. The dog park has a few benches, and we were there with our 3-year-old dog, and she sat next to us, and I'm like, the whole park is empty. Why is this lady sitting next to us? But that was Marilyn. So then we got to talking, and she asked us about our dog, and I said, yes, we got our dog from Jana. She just recently died, and she was our trainer. She says, oh, I did her website. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's pretty interesting, right? So that was our connection, was with Gracie and Quinn. And so we visited Gracie at the house. We became friends. And Quinn, Mrs. Gracie, and will for a long time. But my relationship with Marilyn was cold and hot. I'm Italian, she's Italian. Seems like half the people here are Italian. So we would bump heads a lot, and we would have major disagreements on whether to feed my dog chicken feet raw, or chicken feet frozen, or chicken feet whatever. And then after those talks, maybe we didn't talk for a while. She was an interesting person, and our relationship was very dynamic. Half the things that you have talked about, she never shared that with us. She never spoke about her own accolades, and we know her for 3 years. She was very modest. I wouldn't say shy, but very modest. The last 2 years, and who knew that it was going to go from dog to cancer? I developed cancer. So she wanted to be my mentor. I really didn't want a mentor. She was telling me to do things that I thought, well, I'm not going to do. Like Pilates. I'm not going to do Pilates. I never did it in my life. I'm not going to do it while I have cancer. So that was another disagreement with us. And she was strong, and so was I. But, and then this is another strange spiritual happening. We're at the airport just recently going to New England, me and my partner. And there was a lady sitting there, and she probably knew we wanted to sit together, so this lady moved to give us her chair. So we started talking about Barry. And I says, oh yeah, I have a good friend from Barry. And it was Pearl. Never met Pearl, never heard about Pearl, nothing. And she says, you know, Marilyn's in hospice. And I'm like, what? She's in hospice? Marilyn never told me. And it was a different relationship. Something she would share, something she wouldn't over the past 3 years. But she left an influence on us that will last the rest of our lives. It's interesting how you can go through life being friends with somebody and not knowing every aspect of their life, or even half of it. So this has been the most amazing remembrance that I've ever been to in my entire life. This is a woman I could have gotten to know over 3 years better. But it just didn't happen until now. So I regard Marilyn's friendship as a very spiritual event for my dog, for us, and for meeting all of you. So thank you. Thank you. I've never done
that. So we have been joking a little bit since Marilyn passed about how she seems to have a hand in what's happening and what's going on. So, you know, she just reached from beyond the grave and gave you some courage, because that's what she did. Yeah, like, come on. Just like she did for all of her theater students. So, like I said, we're going to close this out unless anyone else would like to say something. And please enjoy the refreshments, and love to get to know each of you better. Thank you.